Hi there, this is Desert Lady Diaries, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm your host, Dawn Davis, and this is episode number 17. If you're a first-time listener, welcome, and if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. You can find us on the web at desertladydiaries.com, or you can email us at desertladydiaries@gmail.com. Also, a few folks have asked about making donations for this podcast, so I recently added a donate button to the website. If you're getting value from this podcast, I would love it if you'd go to desertladydiaries.com and donate what you can. This week's guest is Gabriella Nagy. She talks about coming to the States from Hungary, finding her place in the desert, and the value of travel. Welcome to Desert Lady Diaries. This week my guest is Gabriella Nagy, and she's a fellow searcher who constantly thrives on learning about how to live more fully on every level. This path has led her to practice many different forms of art like yoga, meditation, chanting, storytelling, and the art of knotting, which you might know as macrame. I've seen many of her pieces and they're really beautiful. She sells them at different craft fairs and markets around town every once in a while. She and her husband also host guests at their home, El Corazon del Desierto. Did I say that right?
Yes, that's
okay.
Correct.
The heart of the desert. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Good. So as I start every podcast, my question always is, what was your very first encounter with the desert?
Well, it happened, it was 2005. A friend brought me out here to visit with a friend, and my husband stayed, at that time future husband stayed with this friend, and I was a surprise guest. So my future husband didn't know that I'm coming, and this friend who actually brought us together, she was driving me out here.
Oh my goodness.
And I was so very nervous.
Sure.
And excited too. I never been in the desert before.
Okay.
I drove through the country with my son when we moved from New Jersey to the West Coast, but never really observed the desert. Yeah, so that was my first experience.
Okay. When you came into the desert, what did you think of it? Did you even have a thought about it at that moment?
Not really, because I was just here to see my boyfriend at that time. That was very exciting for me, obviously.
Right.
But then next morning we went out of the desert, and a friend of ours lived up in the park, and I saw the choyas, I saw the creosote. It was a very different landscape that I got used to before, living in Hungary, in New Jersey, and then Santa Monica. It was something very different. And I remember going to the park after that and seeing the beautiful rocks and the Barker Dam and everything. Then we got married 7 months later at this friend's house by this couple, by these friends of ours.
Here in Joshua Tree?
Here in Joshua Tree.
Oh, wow.
Next to the park. And had this beautiful wedding. Went back home to Malibu with my husband now. And every year we came out once or twice to visit friends. And during the summer back in Malibu, we said, wow, the desert is really beautiful, but we could not live there during the summer. There is no way. But then, by grace of God, really, we ended up here. We've been living here for over 2 years. I want to say the desert has been very, very generous and kind to us.
How did that moment happen where you guys decided we're going to move to Joshua Tree?
That's another long story.
Can you give me the Reader's Digest version?
Try, let me see if I can do that. We came out basically to house sit for a few friends. Coincidences brought us here for this house sitting experiments. We were gonna open a sober retreat in Costa Rica, and we bought a land down there, and we built a little cabin. But my husband got really sick down there, and 2014 got hospitalized, couldn't work. And while he was recovering, we were living in this little apartment, and he really needed to get out from there because there was no really purpose for for him anymore, because he couldn't do anything what he was able to do before because of this disease. So we decided to come out to Joshua Tree for the music festival or for the art tour. I can't really remember. In 2014, there we got offered this house sitting gig that brought us out here again in December for a longer period of time. By that time, we sold the Costa Rica property. We were just looking into a little bit how much are the houses here. We were able to find this house that it wasn't even on the market, or was the first day on the market.
Oh, wow.
Before we left, going back to our little apartment, and I didn't even see the house inside because I had to go back for my work. We just put an offer on it, and next day my husband sent me pictures of the inside when he was able to go in, and our offer got accepted, and everything was just basically flowing there. It doesn't mean that there were no hard times, challenges, although it was nothing like our Costa Rica adventure. Now I understand how something feels meant to be, and is supported by some higher forces.
Right.
And when it's just not your path. Like the Costa Rica was a good learning experiment. It didn't seem to be happening for us, really, just manifesting the way how we want it to manifest.
Right. Well, and it sounds like you were almost, with those house sitting gigs, it was like you were being invited and invited and invited.
Tell me about it.
Somebody said, we're going to keep inviting them until they're here.
I know, exactly. That's how it feels like.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yes.
So when you guys moved here, obviously, I guess you had friends here because you said you came out, you were married by those friends and everything like that. So I usually ask how people found their community here. So you knew a couple of people, and how did getting involved in the community evolve from there?
Well, really start with Robbie and Kripa, who married us.
Oh, okay.
And through them, they took us to Bobby first.
Okay.
And we just keep going back to see the events there. We love Bobby, and we take guests there and support him in any way how we can. And also Anahita King, who just moved here at that time, she was the friend who drove me out here. I was taking pottery class with her in Topanga, and she was the one who moved out here. So through her we met a few friends, and through Bobby and Robbie and Kripa, and as we started to go out to events, met other people, also my classes, my yoga students, through the yoga students, which are basically my friends.
So are you teaching here?
I'm teaching at Instant Karma Yoga.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 classes. I just started a new class on Wednesday, which is including sound bath in it, and it's a restorative yoga, and I have another class on Saturday at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Which is a heart flow class.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I didn't know you taught over there. I didn't even know you taught yoga, so I'm learning something new about you. This is why I'm doing this. I get to learn more about people. It's amazing.
I have to tell you, I listened to some of your interviews, and I learned so much about the community, and I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to understand and learn more about what I'm part of, what we are part of, what we are in together. I'm just like amazed by this community every day, continuously, over and over.
Right.
It's nothing like this.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful place to be with a lot of wonderful people doing a lot of really cool things. So it's just nice to be here. Speaking of doing cool things, how did you get started doing macrame?
Another long story. Actually, not that long. This one is not that long. It's really representing for me the creative vortex, creative energy of Joshua Tree could affect people in here. I mean, I was not a big believer that it's really like a vortex and crystal bed is here and everything. But I know like lots of artists are around here, and I kept telling our guests that this is a creative vortex and everything. And then one day, guests came through our Airbnb, and while we were talking with her, she said she's a macrame artist. And we got connected, felt aligned with her. And by the end of her stay, we decided to do a retreat together, a weekend retreat together at our house, where I teach yoga, mindfulness, chanting, so people get into the present, get into their creative self, their creativity, the innate creativity, because you have it inside of you, just need to be able to tap into. So in February, we actually did the retreat together with this macrame artist, and before that, I went to her workshop, a 2-hour workshop in San Diego, where she was giving this workshop, just to see how she's working, how she's teaching, so I can support her during the retreat that we arranged together. And I saw the pieces that were made there, and actually this is the piece that I brought with me. This is my first piece that I made there.
Oh gosh.
And we did the retreat in here, and by the end of the retreat, when we practiced yoga, meditation, chanting, and took the group to the park, the pieces came out so much more creative. It's just like they were just so intricate. Some attendees even said, "Oh, I'm not an artist," and it was just amazing how her piece came out. I was shocked. I was in tears. So this touched me deeply, and since I learned how to practice this nodding art, I just couldn't stop nodding. Actually, I applied to have an Airbnb experience to support people on this journey to actually see their creativity showing up on a piece, on a wall hanging, a macrame wall hanging, or a lamp, or whatever they're gonna create during this time with me together in our space, which is a very creative, like spiritual space that we created at our house.
Yeah, you invited me the other day, but I was getting back from traveling, so I was like, oh, this isn't the right time. Although, you know what, maybe it was, because it would have wound me down a little bit. But I would love to come. So your Airbnb, you are on-site hosts. Is that how I see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
and
we are.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because
I'll be happy to.
There are many Airbnb experiences here in the high desert that are not hosted. And I, who never thought I would own another home again after owning 2, one in New Jersey and one in North Carolina, coming here, that has kind of changed me, not only because I expect probably to stay here, but also because of the opportunity that Airbnb offers. And I've used Airbnb myself when I travel, and it's kind of disappointing to show up and just have the code to the lockbox and let yourself in. Or in San Francisco, they got one of these old Victorians, and they've got room JKLM, and they hire somebody, I think, to just sit in the kitchen for a couple of hours a day to be the quote-unquote host. It's pretty disappointing. So my thought process is I would look for something here that could support me and my needs for my voiceover work, but then also give me the opportunity to be an in-home host. So tell me, was that even a consideration for you guys? Did you just decide we want to we want to be the in-home host, we don't want to be the absentee host, if you will? Tell me about that.
Well, it just happened in this way. We wanted to do hospitality down there in Costa Rica. We took some groups there during 3 years on adventure retreats. And we rented another place because ours wasn't ready. And we practiced yoga, meditation, adventures, waterfall rappelling. So anyway, we wanted to do this hospitality business before. So when this house came up on the market, when we found this house, it was a huge house for us. It had 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. So my husband said, well, we can use a little extra income, so why don't we rent 2 rooms out and use the master for ourselves? So we created 1 room, nice atmosphere, and put all the things from traveling, all the pieces that we gathered from our traveling in it. And And that's the desert vista. And then we created another one, which is representing our love towards the Hindu culture. And it's a Shakti room. And the third one, we were just gonna live in, but we got so busy with these 2 rooms, and the third one was next to us. Plus, we had one Chihuahua, and another came, and then they had babies, so we were there next to the guests with the 6 dogs. So we decided to convert the 4th bedroom to a tiny house in the back.
Oh, okay.
So that's where we live in a tiny house in the back, and we have the 3 bedroom rented. And the 3rd bedroom became really my husband's project. I created all the furniture in there out of pallet wood that he never did before. He continues to amaze me. He just picks up something and he just does this amazing pieces, creates these amazing pieces. So we're renting out those 3 rooms, and if we don't have an emergency, we always there. So we greet 95% of the guests personally, either my husband or I, and take time to talk to them and get to know them and see why are they here. We created a guest book. They are amazed by that guest book, actually, that we put together. It's all about Joshua Tree, the hikes, how to respect the desert. What is this whole desert thing about? So I feel it's really useful for them.
Right.
Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. It did. So, but it sounds like you also get a lot out of meeting all of these people.
Definitely. Oh my goodness. During these 2 years, since we've been hosting people, we made so many friends. It's like almost overwhelming. So many interesting, inspiring people.
Where do you remember, like, where the furthest people came from? Like, who traveled the farthest to come here? Were they from overseas?
Yes, Asia, New Zealand, Australia, everywhere from around the globe.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, China. And I learned so much from those people, like how do they live, and we get inspired. And they get inspired by the house, how it looks, and they go home and they send pictures. Oh, I created a new altar for myself because the way how your house set up. So it's really like so uplifting.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. That's
it's
great.
a lot of work though. It's not easy to host. There's so many things that you have to be mindful about, take care of, if you wanna be a really good host. And we wanna be a really good host.
Have many of those people come back again and again?
Yes.
They have.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes. We have one guest who comes every month and spends a week with us. She works remotely, and then 1 week she works in here. I mean, we go out to have dinner with her, and she's an environmentalist, and oh my goodness, learning so much.
Right.
Her.
So it's not just people coming in, staying for the weekend. You actually have engaged with them and made friendships with them and them as well.
Yeah.
That's
and
great.
when people stay more than 1 day, we make the effort every day to go over at least one, to go over and check on them. How was their day yesterday? What did they do? How did those things work out that we talked about? Where to go? How was the food? Where we send them? And we send them to places that we try out before we recommend those places for them.
Yeah, no, that's great. So if someone said to you, Gabriella, I'm thinking of moving to the desert, what are some things that you might tell them to be ready for or mindful of?
This reminds me of like 4 of our guests. After staying with us, they moved here. I don't know how popular that statement is going to be when people are hearing, because some people, they just want to keep the desert as it is, and they don't want more people to move here.
Right.
But they did, and they love it here. What would I say? The desert going to teach you to surrender. I think it really taught me that. To move with the weather, to move with you, which is your extension of the nature. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I'm still learning it.
I think we all are. Yeah.
Nowhere near, like understanding it fully. But I realized that you need to move with the pace of the weather and your pace. You have to really pace
Well, and
yourself.
with the little creatures, I think I told you when you got here, I had a lizard in the house. He had gotten in this morning as I was on my way out the door, and I just didn't have time to hunt him down. So I was sitting here while I was waiting for you, and I saw him sneak out from under the television looking, because I'd left the door, open, and I think he realized, I'm not in the right place.
Good.
But those kind of things, you just have to, be prepared and ready for.
Yes.
And I think a big part of that surrender, too, is the silence.
Yes. I love that.
I love it, too.
I have no problem with that.
Right.
To be alone, to be out. I mean, we lived in Malibu. When we lived in Malibu, the closest store was 30 minutes from us.
Right.
We lived out in the wilderness. It was just the raccoons and the squirrels and the coyotes around us. And I love that. I love that. Yeah.
So when you're not busy, like your Airbnb is ready for guests, and you kind of are thinking about your next macrame project, what other kind of things do you do to occupy your time here?
Really? I
Nothing other than that?
No. No, my life is so full with managing the Airbnb, always improving the house, improving
teaching,
the yard.
Teaching yoga.
Yes,
Right.
and from Bobby, I got very inspired, so I made some yard art, and I planted the plants, and I designed a watering system. And you showed up, but it just try to do as much by yourself as much as possible. And there are so many things that you can include in your Airbnb business. The look of it, you can always like paint the walls or do this and that.
Yeah, because it is, I guess, because it gets used. I guess, for lack of a better word. So it's not like it's just you guys living there, and maybe after 5 years you might want to paint something. If you've got guests in there on a regular basis, turning and turning and turning and turning, stuff kind of wears down and wears out, needs replaced or cleaned up a little bit or whatever. So, yeah.
And that's renewing the energy, and that's a constant process to bring new energy to the house. I don't really like to stay in hotels because the energy is just so depleted. There is no life in those places. Yeah. So what we try to provide a real home with books that people can read, the guests can read, and they love reading those books. And fulfill themselves in every way, from the statues to the macrame down to the last details. I'm so very detail oriented. It's just crazy. Have tablecloths on the table in the kitchen, like actual fabric cloths, tablecloths. So they feel at home.
And that you've put in that extra effort to just make this the best experience that they could possibly have.
Yes.
That's great. That's great.
That's how I work. I do everything from my heart. Otherwise, I don't really like to do them. I try to get out of those situations that I can't put my heart into it.
Right.
Yes.
Being here in this place now, for how many years have you been here?
2.5.
2.5. Do you feel like this is where you're going to stay?
I'm not sure about that. I am still missing the green. So what would be ideal to get a land somewhere, and we are planning to buy an Airstream that we can take up there, and we can be around greenness and water a little more for a longer period of time. We took this trip up into the north this summer, up in Oric, to a campsite where the Roosevelt elk came down to on the beach.
Oh, beautiful.
And we traveled through California, and we just both realized we're longing for the green and the water. So we will see.
Right.
I don't know if I'm ready to move all the way. I really love my house.
Right.
Really love what I do in here, including everything. I'm really grateful for this place. But maybe I need a couple of months to be able to go somewhere else where there is a little greener and a little more water.
When I was considering moving here, it was the first time I came here was like April, and then a couple months went by and it was July. And I thought, wow, I could really tell if I was going to make it here if I were able to get a house sitting situation over the summer. Mm-hmm. So I think there are some people here that do that. They kind of close up shop and go away for those 2 months when it's super hot. Mm-hmm. I mean, it worked out for me because, ironically, I put that out in the universe, and
nice.
I ended up getting a house sitting situation for a couple of days that had no swamp cooler, no air conditioning.
What?
Yeah.
So you really got
So
the
I
desert experience.
Got the full experience, exactly. So I don't think that that's too far off for some people that are here to think about doing that you're here most of the time enjoying, what's here, and then just to take, if you can, weeks or months, and then just kind of travel and refresh yourself in a different way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense.
So it's yet to be revealed.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, have you always practiced yoga?
Pretty much since high school.
Okay.
In Hungary, yoga was kind of like, how you say that? It's not allowed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was kind of like coming from the West, it was something that was not really supported by the government.
Mm-hmm.
I still practiced yoga there. Mm. But really, when I moved to Santa Monica in 2004, I think, 2003, 2004, that's where I really got back to it. And that's when I started to really study and my yoga teacher training. And since that, I'm just constantly studying philosophy, enjoy learning about the stories of the Hindu mythology. And I teach some of those classes where we can learn from these archetypes, basically, how I consider the Hindu deities are.
If yoga was not, we'll say it was banned,
yes,
for lack of a better word, in Hungary, how did you come upon it and discover it?
I just met a friend who was teaching yoga there, actually.
Oh, wow.
So I think we went to a folk camp together, and he was an artist, a teacher there, and he was teaching yoga. So when we finished the camp, we started practicing together, the group of people together.
Right,
yes.
Kind of like underground yoga.
Something like that.
Wow, oh my gosh.
Back into, 1980, I think, around 1980, 1984 at that time. Yes.
Wow. Isn't that, it just boggles my mind sometimes that, do you think it's fear that, a government would say something like that was not allowed?
I think so, because everything was not allowed which came from the West, came from the capitalist world.
Okay.
It was just blocked from the jeans to, I don't know, perfumes or whatever. Everything.
Oh my goodness.
Even the movies. The movie Hair came to Hungary around 1982, and that's about the hippie movement, and it happened a long time.
Right, many years after.
Many years before. Yes.
Wow.
In here, yeah.
So was it an adjustment for you then to move to the States from there? Obviously you just opened up and accepted it, but how did that feel as a...
Oh my goodness, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I just felt like I'm free finally. I can breathe. I have opportunities. I have this everything that is available. And with the language, there's so many more things available, like studying the yoga and more literature that I couldn't read in Hungary because it wasn't translated. And before that, I didn't really speak the language. So I just really, really loved it. Yes. I remember when I was living in New Jersey, I went to New York every weekend, my free time, and I looked at those buses with the tourists and I felt so sorry for them because they have to go back. I was just in bliss.
That's interesting.
Was such a big deal for me. Such a big deal.
Well, it's about the time that I usually ask my guest if they would like to answer a question from my 17-year-old niece.
I'll be happy to.
Okay. So here's the jar. Will you just pick the mystery question? And if you would read it out loud, that would be great.
Okay, let's see. What do I do first right out of college so I know I am stable? What do I do first right out of college so I know I'm stable? Travel.
Good for you. That's a great answer.
Just go and travel for a year or more and just follow your heart. Follow your gut feeling, follow your heart.
I think that's very important advice because I think at that age, you've seen a few things, but you haven't seen everything. And your view is very limited. So if you experience and see other things, that gives you a grander menu, if you will,
Exactly.
to choose from when you actually think about what you want to start making your life. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And you get to know yourself better through traveling.
Sure.
And just take a yoga teacher training somewhere.
There you go.
Even if you don't want to teach, it's just such a self-improvement that really gives you an opportunity to be more stable inside of yourself.
Because
to be more centered.
Exactly. Because having that core confidence and belief in yourself is so important. And I think it's even more important these days that you've got so many things coming at you from different directions, so many distractions. It's so important to know who you are and what you stand for so that you can make those decisions.
Exactly. And there is that space, your center, you can always go back to no matter where you are. If you are in the biggest wind world, you just there without money or anything, you always find a way back there. And from that stability, peace, you can live life differently.
Right. That is perfect. So thank you very much for coming and talking to me today.
It was such a blessing. Thank you. I really honored it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Me as well.
Thanks so much, Gabriella. And thanks so much to you for listening to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. There are so many ways you could spend your time, so thanks for spending it here. I hope you got some insight and inspiration, and if you did, I hope you'll share that with me and the other listeners on the Desert Lady Diaries Facebook page. Next week, I'm talking with Kim McGowan, a partner in the Joshua Tree Candle Company. I hope you'll join us. At the top of the show, I mentioned that there is now a donate button on the website. As you might imagine, there's a lot of time and effort involved and some expense like podcast hosting platforms where the podcasts live so folks can listen at any time, purchasing space on SoundCloud, which makes the podcast available for folks who don't download podcasts on iTunes or Stitcher, but listen from the web, and the website and the domain. So if you like the podcast and maybe find yourself saying, wow, I really like this podcast and I'd really like to show my appreciation, I hope you'll go out and find that donate button and share what you can. And with Thanksgiving upon us, I just want to say that I'm so grateful to the women of the desert who have inspired me to create this podcast, and for those who have come in to be part of the conversation. I am so grateful to you. And for you, I am also very grateful for you for listening. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful Thanksgiving holiday.